Do you feel that in a time when we are more connected than ever, we are drifting away from real human connection, especially to ourselves? I do. Hi, I'm Leticia Latino, and I want to invite you to join me and my very inspiring guests in exploring ways to reconnect to your essence, to your definite purpose, to what makes you tick. Are you ready? Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Back to Basics, Reconnecting to the Essence of You. My guest today is Shirelle Francis. She's a dynamic leader, renowned speaker, and IT and cybersecurity expert with over 40 years of experience in public speaking. As the CEO and founder of iLeapGroup, she's dedicated to bridging the digital divide and serving underserved communities. She transforms challenges into opportunities, ensuring that anybody she consults with is prepared, protected, and ready to propel forward. She is also the founder of the iElevate community, a space dedicated to women entrepreneurs focused on growth, leadership, and work-life integration. Hello, Shirelle, and welcome to Back to Basics.
Hello, and thank you. Hearing that bio is like, really? I love the woman part.
I love it. I love it. And for context, I've shared on the show before that oftentimes I don't know my guests personally. People think I do. I don't. But then my paths cross with people that are really interested and inspiring, such as yourself. And then I say, you must come to the show. You must be part of it. Because I don't interview people from my industry or with any crazy agenda. So that's why it's always very spontaneous.
I love that. Yeah, this is going to be great. So thank you for having me. It's an honor, really, share space.
Well, I'm excited from the moment we met and everything you touch and your initiatives, and we immediately cross-connected into, yes, we're business women, but we love to make impact, and we love that our initiatives help make the world a better place. So let's start with the origin story. Tell us about young Shirelle, what you dreamt about. You look like somebody that, yes, like he was already writing letters to Congress about how you were going to change the world.
That is hilarious. It's true. I knew out the gate that ironically I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a judge. I was inspired by Thurgood Marshall, who since passed away, and Shirley Chisholm, and then my grandfather, Joe Clark, who has now passed away. But I grew up being babysat by him. So my grandfather was retired from the Air Force. He served and then loved to cook and opened a restaurant, and then was a chef at the Veterans Hospitals in New Jersey. So wow. My exposure to community change was out the gate, and he would have me read the newspaper, and I would try to skip to the comics, but then we go over history and watch National Geographics and then talk about the revolution and then what I was going to do for college. Like, that's what I remember. So out the gate, I always knew that I wanted to make sure if ever I was in the room, I wanted every person to know that they mattered. That's what I got from my grandfather. There was no stranger in the room, and that everyone mattered, and titles were always out the door, but we respected everyone accordingly. So for me, that leveled up to, okay, we're going to go into government, and I always had to have the last word. So everyone was like, yeah, you're going to be a lawyer, go debate. And so I got obsessed with that. And it turned into me not being an attorney, but my 12-year-old is headed to law school, and I have pre-acceptance. Maybe I'll do some IP law, but that's what led me over to tech. Yeah.
I love that. And so you were like, first of all, I want to reflect upon as parents, and I have a 14 and a 10-year-old, but like what you said is just so important, because we minimize how young children see what maybe at that point where he was making you watch National Geographic, you would say, oh, come on again. And now that's the thing you bring forward in a podcast, how important that was and how it marked you. So I think as parents, we need to really commit to expose our young kids to all this stuff.
So I'm so glad you said that because I remember my grandfather telling us, you will know how to swim, you will know how to ride a horse, and you will travel across the country. And so that was like drilled into us. And so my husband and I laugh because he's by way of Jamaica. I've been here over 30, 40 years now. But I've been to more countries and more states and more continents than my husband, who was 17 years my senior, very well educated, checked all the boxes, but the exposure my grandfather, grandmother were so committed to. And I can't say that without my mom, who was a single mom, nurse, working that 10-4 shift, 10 days, back to back, nights, weekends, all of the things. But she made it a point that my grandparents would be a part of rearing my life. So the work ethic I saw every day in her. And then the reiteration, my grandfather, who was retired, my grandmother, who was a information analyst at Frigidaire and IBM. I was surrounded by this environment of work ethics, transformation, but being conscious of our environment. And you're right, the exposure is so important for our young adults. Because they need to be global citizens.
Mm-hmm.
That's what my grandfather taught me, to be a global citizen. So I appreciate that I took Hungarian for 8 years and could speak and write in Hungarian. I lived in a community that was highly populated with Hungarian ancestry. And then as it shifted in the late 80s, 90s, high Hispanic and Latino population. So you had like this pretty much a triad of all three, African American, Latinos, and Hungarians. And so my grandfather was like, you will not be the child who's never been to the beach, who's never flown on a plane, who's never went on a train, who's never went from New Jersey to California and then south and north and Canada and Europe. And that shapes our thinking. And Leticia, I think it allows us to think outside of the physical box of what we see. Like I never dreamed with limits. I think it was hard to dream without budget because that was different culturally, female, African American, but I had never had limits on my dreams. It was just, okay, figure out how we're going to do the money part, communal wise, and we did. But he taught us dream big and act on it. He was big about acting on it. He didn't say much, but when he spoke, everybody stopped to listen.
Well, he sounds like an amazing human being. He was an amazing human being. But, if one believes on legacy, and sometimes sounds cliche, but again, he left a lot of you is him, for what I hear. And so he lives on, and that's the power. I do think when you act on it, to quote him, when you don't just say the words, and it's easy to say to a young person, do this, do that, but if they don't see you doing it, right? I remember I took my kids, Venezuelan, so we had a voting recently, and we're taping this right after the US election, so the voting is fresh in my mind. But I was, from a country that hasn't seen a democratic election in over 20 years. It was important for me to take my kids to the process, and we lined up for like 4 hours to go see, not to the voting, actually. This was like a convening, a protest, peaceful protest that we had here in Miami when there was well, not to get into that side of it, but I saw their face, because one thing is to say we're going, or mommy's going to do this, and then taking them. And I was a little cautious because you're also afraid to put them into those situations. But then to see how engaged they were with the whole thing, and then wanting to learn more about what happened later and all that. So it's just incredible that that you had that incredible role model. And so then you decide to go, you go study and you join the corporate world. And how was that transition and that picking? Because I'm always big, I have young audience too, and I'm always big on picking the right career, and also sharing the message that there's no right or wrong, and that you can always pivot and change. That's always a message of Back to Basics.
I love that. And you're right, especially coming off the wings of election, more from the place of choices, right? Like how do we come to our choices? And for me, my career if you grow up in New Brunswick, New Jersey, where I was born and raised, you either go to Rutgers, work at Robert Wood Johnson Hospital, or work at Johnson and Johnson, or you work at the Foundation Center. There's other places, trust me, but even the Hyatt Hotel, which is a huge employer in New Brunswick, is mainly a Johnson Johnson client. So you're like inundated by this community within a community. We've always been known as the hub city because a lot of people pass through, go to New York or Philly. Our trains get there very fast. So it's a really convenient place to grow up. But when you're surrounded by these corporate giants, it can make you feel small too, because it's like, okay, what do I do? But I grew up in a house where all three, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, my grandmother had 5, 6 birth children, and we all spent our summers, holidays, spring breaks at my grandmother's house. And I was the only grand at that time that lived with her. I was the second eldest. My cousin passed ahead of me, but all boys. This is my point, my career. All boys. So 12 boys and then me. And I was the eldest, right? So it was just mania. My mom wanted a boy, got a girl. Her brothers wanted boys. Her sisters wanted boys, and they all had sets of boys. So we got all these boys, and they would not share the Atari. Now, it was bought to be in my grandmother's house, but they like ruled over it. And so I got tired of crying about it. And one night I stayed up really late, did all my chores, and I learned how to play the racing game. I can't remember the name of it now. This is 80s. And I was like, I'm going to beat them every time. And I did. I beat them every time. So I had this innate competitiveness. And in that, I fell in love with technology. I fell in love with the gaming. I fell in love with figuring things out. And when I came to my career, I started working early, 11 years old, my first job babysitting, 13 years old, summer program in New Brunswick at, Moran, Hoagland, Longo, Moran, Dunst, and Dukas. I can't believe I still remember the name of the firm. One of the largest firms in the country. And I started Leticia in the mailroom. It was so manual. I told the manager, Patrick, there's got to be a better way to do this. And I was watching all the transcribers at that time on their typewriters. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. And I was obsessed with process. I understood that wherever chaos was, I could generally see in my mind how to make sense of it and bring order. And so by the second week, I was working upstairs with senior legal staff, helping the assistants. And it kept growing. And that was my true entry into corporate space at the age of 13. And I had the audacity to go to the senior partner, Mr. Hoagland, and said, my grandmother received a fine for trash around our yard, and we clean it up all the time. I said, it's from the bar across the street. You need to do something. His assistant was like, oh my God, I never forget the look on her face. He said, call your grandmother. Because back then we didn't have cell phone. We didn't text. Call your grandmother, have her come in. And till this day, they've been our attorneys.
Oh, wow.
That was my true intro into corporate space. And I'll say this quickly. I was obsessed with the law legal field. I followed certain attorneys, Thurgood Marshall, many others. But once I got to Seton Hall, where I matriculated, and once I started working for a firm, I realized I did not want to be an attorney that had to negotiate my values, because I always wanted to be in the courtroom fighting. But even at the law firm, I ended up upgrading their systems, automating their file system, working with all the administrative support, working with the lawyers. And it led me to a really, really wonderful corporate career. So from there, I went on back to New Brunswick to Johnson & Johnson, teaching the summer programs, and then working in IT, project coordinator, started like I was at the basement at Seton Hall University in the lab, and it just began to grow. But working at Johnson & Johnson was pivotal for me because I was back home, but I did not want to get boxed in. So I took all the global assignments. And so I did LATAM. Back then we called it BRIC region, right? Russia, it was Brazil, Russia, India, Asia, China, all of those global assignments. I rose my hand. I was young. I was single, willing to travel. I think I've had American Express since like 2002. It was insane. I had to learn how to manage that was my intro to corporate America. And I can remember my grandfather had passed then saying, take the opportunities. And that is what led me into tech and understanding that tech was more business than it was machinery in a certain degree at corporate space. But it was a jolt of reality too, right? Because everybody didn't want a freedom fighter. Everybody didn't want a change agent. Everybody didn't want a transformer in the room. They want you to do your work and deliver. So I had to learn how to negotiate and then still be authentic. And over time, I learned there was no negotiating. I had to choose the rooms that were right for me.
Wow, that's as Oprah would say, that's a quotable moment, tweetable
A
moment.
tweetable moment.
Choose the rooms that are right for you.
Right for me, yes. Yeah.
That's very powerful. I think sometimes we have this fear of missing out, and we are willing to get into rooms that are not for us. And then it's hard to put the finger on it, because you do want to do it. Because again, if I don't do it, then I'm going to miss out. But I think that claiming of the power to choose in the room, it's almost like accelerates you to get where you want to go in the first place. I don't know if you would agree with that.
I just got goosebumps because like we prep for these things, but this I didn't even think about till you said it. I did a lot of work pre-pandemic with ERG, steering committee, diversity, all of that. And I just knew that I need to be a chief diversity officer. And someone really amazing and wise, Michelle Gee, who is now over Ebony, Jet, Essence. She's done amazing media, has her own marketing firm, said, no, you don't have to be the chief diversity officer. She said, you stay in your lane and make sure you bring that to every role you're in. I was like, what? No. But I had to respect her because I love her. I knew she knew the business, but part of me couldn't resolve her telling me no. I mean, we were sitting next to each other at this. She's like, no, Shirelle, no. And I struggled with that because I thought if I do that, then I can reach back and bring people in. And as time would have it, I learned that wasn't the case. I learned that a lot of those roles wouldn't exist, and they don't today. I learned that a lot of it was checking the box. It was a campaign, not a commitment. And so when I thought I was missing out, I was really am grateful. I think God winked at me. I was protected from some of my just not knowing. And as time came, I'm like, so I get to build a business and an empire that will actually create rooms where diversity, equitable minds, options, choices, disruptive discussions are welcomed in a respectful manner. Instead of trying to look for the rooms, I just go get the tree and build the table myself. Forget it.
I love it. And that's why you and I immediately connected.
Yes.
Because we both are like, okay, what do we need here?
I'll roll up my sleeves. I'll do it myself, get it done, and then really leave a legacy, not be a legend. Like, I don't know. I think you could be a legend and it's very fleeting, but legacy, I think, is very different. Your children's children will remember legacy. And that's the piece, right, for my daughter, two older bonus children, and now grandson. It needs to be here after I leave. So I think a lot of the building will be in real time, and then the actual fruition of it all will be when Zoe's older and she has children. I think I'll get to see snippets of it, but I think the full bloom will be way after I've left.
And it's easier than people think, because one of the reasons why I embark on doing this podcast is precisely that. And this will be here even after we're both gone, if anybody wants to find it. This will go on longer than we will.
I love that.
And so the message will remain. And as they always say, when the student is ready, the teacher shows up. And I am a firm believer about that. And so I say, well, this will live somewhere, and you don't worry about all the rest, that this is something. And you bake them in, to your point. Like I'm of the same mindset of, yes, because I have the knowledge, I could have other job positions. And and it's easier because you say, well, in this job position I will get paid this so much more, and I'm choosing to stay in this other role, helping the family business, getting all the problems, headaches, and other things and challenges. And just, it sounds like the hardest, but because you get to call the shots, as you just yourself say, then we get both involved in DEI. And so we bring the conversation to the table, and innovation and small business ownership and all these other things on top of what our companies do, which is quite technical.
Very. And I'm glad you said that because, I had someone at a really huge conference. I won't call out the conference, but two leaders and one major business owner, like, what's the brand? I said, I'm sorry. What fashion brand do you wear? Do you have a table here? Are you selling things? They thought that I was actually there to sell clothes.
Well, you're always so beautifully dressed. I'm not surprised.
I love fashion. It is my outward expression of what I cannot do physically. I cannot sew. I can get a button on. I think that's about it. But I love fashion. But I had to pause and say, okay, where is this? What's the intent? And I got a little defensive, and I realized I'm at a technical, major, our geeky world, major conference. A lot of people are tense. It's a lot going on. The AI piece was just booming. And I realized they genuinely liked my clothing. It wasn't about me being a woman. It wasn't about me being a Black woman. It wasn't about my East Coast drawl while I'm down Southwest. It was, where'd you get those clothes? And I said, I have the nerve to have on cowboy boots. Did I not think this was going to stand out at this conference? So it was a checkmate. I said, actually, no, I own an IT firm. We focus on cybersecurity and organizational change management. He said, whoa, well, what do you work on? It turned into an amazing opportunity to partner with one of the biggest security channel providers in the country. So to your point, like that, so the diversity in thinking, I have to be diverse in my thinking too. I can't get boxed in because of some experiences I may have had that are negative. Everyone is not coming from that place. It was truly, and at the end of the conversation, he's like, you still didn't tell me where you got the boots. I'm like, oh, Cavender's, 10 years ago, and great conversation. It wasn't what I thought.
That is a fantastic story, because in the mindfulness world, that would be called telling ourselves our own stories, choosing our own story. And you have created already a novel about what was going on, and you caught yourself. And I think Pema Chodron is very big on this. And she says you have two options, biting into the story you're telling yourself, which most likely is fiction, and suffering, because the only thing that comes from that story is suffering. Because then we say, oh, that person didn't want to do business with me because I'm a woman, because that, yes. Or not engaging in the story and living in the moment and seeing where it takes it and not make it personal, which is what you did, which led to a great opportunity. And once you learn, and I catch myself on this all the time, also, like some experiences, and then you start thinking all these other things, and there's no reason why to think other than past trauma or past reference. And we always want to connect to something that happened to us, and we always want to explain the present with the past. But that creates a lot of suffering into our daily interactions.
It does. You're right. And it's a comfort. It's a comfort. To do the counterintuitive is the hardest part, but the most rewarding. And to your point, it's mindset, and I'm huge on mindset. So I caught myself. I was like, well, let me tell them where I got this stuff from, and it just, here we are a year later, still strong, and great relationship.
I absolutely love that. And so you run a successful IT cybersecurity company. Yeah. And so I'm sure that's an incredible experience. What do you want to share in terms of being a small business owner, anything because we have so much to share. You're one of those very rare people I know, which we connect in so many different things. And that the onion has so many layers. And sometimes people think you do something that is not, like, no, well, I have my own company and we do this, and this. Yeah. And on top of all that, And then I'm an advocate for so many causes that you're really big. Like we've had long discussions on workforce development, on,
Yeah.
inclusion and all these other things. But, as you, if you had to encourage somebody to follow your mission and be a business owner, I think a lot of people get stuck in that thought, like, I cannot do it. It cannot happen. I don't have the contacts, all those stories that we just spoke about to
Yeah.
sabotage ourselves. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that to encourage somebody to follow the passion?
So thank you for that. I think first is be okay with having a passion that may not be profitable.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
I came to that aha
Mhm.
earlier last year, and we'll find ourselves trying to make sure the passion has revenue. I came to the resolve, let me solve a problem and keep my passion protected, because I was upsetting myself with trying to make my passion a revenue income driven effort. And I'm really great at sales, especially service sales. I think I've done over 400 million in service sales when I did the
Incredible.
numbers, right? Like over the years. And most of that has gone to other companies, not iLeapGroup, right? So this is where that reality check comes in. My passion is seeing the underserved, the overlooked, underestimated thrive, period. Especially women who are BIPOC backgrounds, who have a business or desire to do so. Because you and I know that that is an upheaval mountain, right? So what's the problem I solve? I am excellent at bringing order to chaos and plugging the holes that leaders need to ensure that they can grow revenue. That is my thing. And I had to come to hey, this is what I do excellent. So I have 2 zones of genius. That's okay. And I'm a lefty. So maybe it came by birthright, but I had to embrace it. And then I prioritize it. So I would tell a small business owner, and I'll say enterprise, be okay with having a passion and then having something you're really great at, and this is a zone of genius. And if you want to be a small business owner, a very old adage, you have to count up the costs. I had the blessing of being in corporate America and learning profit and loss sheets, forecasting, hard costs, overrides, all of this financial technical aptitude. And truthfully, we weren't really taught that in business classes in college. It was the application of it. So as a small business owner, have your systems in place. I cannot overstate that. It doesn't have to be large and great, but just have systems for managing your income, your cash flow. And what are you selling, a product or service? Is it solving a problem? I just about bet if you are, the resources will come, the income will come, and the clients will come. And then your passion is over here. It may have nothing to do with that problem you're able to solve. That's okay. They don't have to touch, but prioritize it and then balance your time out with it. That's what I had to learn. I was trying to run both trains at the same time with the same gas, which was fumes, which was air, which was horrible. So I had to give myself grace. So give yourself grace. I said, okay, passion, I can give you like 3 hours a week. And then once I get this business up and really, really going and can pay the bills and not have a sleepless nights and do a little better, then I can increase it. I had to tell myself that was okay because I was so used to going full throttle. That does not work. But what I did was keep the passion side of me fueled by conversations, volunteer work, things I did at the church, things I did locally, because it helped to fuel that side of me that needed it. But the business, I had to get to the grit, my systems and operations in place, because I need to work on my business, not in my business. And I struggle with that. I struggle with delegation. I struggle with, it needs to have the iLeap feel, because that's Shirelle, that's her brand. Well, everyone's not going to do it the way I do it. So what does the 80-20 look like? Are you recording your processes and steps, even on Loom or Zoom, which you can do for free, so that when people come as resources to help you, You have intellect to share with them. So I would tell the SMC, give yourself grace, separate your passion from the problem you solve. And then over time, it will begin to balance the scales. But if you're going to be a business owner, you have to make money and be okay with saying that, with hearing it and stating it. You have to make money. I don't have to be apologetic about revenue and going after business and driving it. That has to be the way I'm able to feed and fuel the passion. So the systems, the operations, knowing that you have to have cash flow, and don't be quick to look for certain investments. Like, although I'm tech and you know that, I'm adamant about systems and people being secure, about organization and our young adults having a future to look towards. I didn't go into venture capital. I didn't look for angel investors. I did one business loan because I had to be able to manage where I was. And sometimes we get sucked into such a pressure that is overwhelming. And then before you know it, you're under. So for me, those are the priorities. And that's why I love, love, love the cybersecurity area, because the reality is 83% of businesses have a cybersecurity attack. 60% of them never recover, and 74% of those are small businesses. Mm-hmm. So that's us, right? Like, that's us. So that's a way my passion is like undercurrently fueled and met, because I know with that, okay, at least I'm protecting somebody. So I'm still being the big cousin.
You're the master storyteller. What you did right there, like with those figures, anybody listening, you are at risk of cybersecurity attack, and now you know who to call. But that is, and it's not done with that purpose. It's done because you're really baking everything you do. And I speak from, because I believe we operate very similarly.
Yes.
That where it really creates momentum, to paraphrase Seth Godin, who always talks about the snowball effect. Once you do this over and over and over, everything is so intertwined. Like, we have connected several times, and we still have to connect, to do the formal business. Like, we know we can help each other. We have said that many times, but we both prioritize, like, no, let's do the podcast first, and let's just inspire somebody, be inspired. I'm inspired by this conversation. I have to tell you, I always tell you every time, because it's almost like you find your tribe, and you find somebody that sees life as you see it. And we have talked about this. It gets very lonely. This vision that you laid out here, and that we're discussing about, which is find your passion and don't expect to make money out of it. It's been 5 years. I haven't made $1. I mean, when I add up what this podcast has cost me at the end of the day, and I don't put a lot of investment into it, but these 5 years, 5 years of editing, 5 years, it adds up. Wow. But I do it so happily, and it's not a weight, because when I get that text or that message on our website or something, and they say that episode was just exactly what I needed to hear today, it has no value. Like, I cannot put a value tag to that message, right? So, and you find, to your point, and you find ways to keep it moving. So I will do a plug for my own podcast, which I had never done, but I make an announcement that our YouTube channel is finally up and running. And, we have like 5 years of episodes and videos that I had never had the energy or the time or the resources to put them in video format. And then you keep hearing, how many people consume via YouTube, because they like to see the face. They can see the beautiful blouse you have for this interview. And so, I finally decided, and I'll share this very quickly, not to take from your airtime, but I recently interviewed Dr. Gladys McCormick, which was 103 years old at the time of the interview, and was a woman that brought holistic medicine to the U.S. And it was the most beautiful interview. It was taped in, I believe, August, and 1 month later, she passed away. And, I was so bummed. The episode had aired, but then I'm sitting on the video of this incredible woman, probably one of the last interviews, and I took it as a message from God, saying it's time to produce these videos, to edit. Even we are starting slow, so it's gonna be popping up on the YouTube channel 6 at a time.
So
But
excited.
that urgency to like release this content that I have that I know will help somebody else in the world, and to see her face and all that. So I wanted to use my own airtime to
Good.
announce that this YouTube channel is up and running, and now you're gonna be actually probably the second or third interview that would air on time, both the audio and the video at the same
Oh
time.
my gosh. Okay, so I so needed to hear that because I have content and I haven't had made time for me to go do my YouTube stuff. And I have some stuff out there, but I literally said to my daughter yesterday, "Are you gonna help mommy? We gotta do some of the editing." She looked at me like, she's like, "Mom, I want to go to law school." I said, "I'll get the other daughter. She'll help me. She's digital marketing." I was like, "I'll get Daddy. We'll get it
Yeah.
done." But I literally just scheduled 2 Saturdays to do batch content. This YouTube dynamic is bigger than we can ever imagine. And I'm telling you, I'm so glad you are going to do this with this, Erin. I didn't know we were going to be YouTube. I just love the dress. You know that about me.
Good.
But it's like in the 60s. My grandma said 50s and 60s, they would sit by the radio.
Yes.
And that was family time, that audio piece, sitting by the radio, because even if you didn't have a TV, you had a radio and shows were by radio. So in some ways, YouTube reminds me of that because, we learn, we interact, but it's this communal way of receiving that is going to be here forever. So we become memorialized, right? And so now you put it out there, it's memorialized, and that abundance will come right back. So I'm really glad. I can't wait to see McCormick recording. Like I'm waiting.
You have to. Yeah, that was a special episode, and also, just for anybody there, that's to your point of the passion, you don't have to do it all at the same time, and that's why I also wanted to share these. That I have 5 years of videos that I not done anything. I always say, "Oh my God, I need to do this. I need to do this," but then the time comes when it's right, and you have to also learn to be, as we say, give yourself grace. Be patient. And when the time comes, you'll know. And it's going to be something like this. Unfortunately, she passing away, but it was like a signal. It was almost like a nudge, like, I'm going to help you to move forward. And I took that, and then I felt that sense of wanting to do that. So I hope that our conversation is inspiring others to think about that passion, think about that one thing that they want to move forward.
Yes.
And before we end our beautiful conversation, I always we've spoken about a lot of things, but I know that we can have probably a series with you about every single initiative. What is it, anything that we haven't specifically touched upon, but that you want to highlight, that is exciting you these days, and initiatives that you're looking forward to working on some more?
I will say I am most thankful for you having me here, but what I'm most excited about is just wrapping up an amazing deal with a major historically Black college university. It is in St. Louis, Missouri, and they have the first Black female president there. She's also a former student, a former employee, so she checks all the boxes. We've built relationship over the years, and we are closing the deal on doing the full digital transformation, security, infrastructure, staff, the whole soup to nuts. Why that excites me is because not only are we able to bring them to the highest level of digital transformation, but we're also going to staff part of their department with the students. So I'm getting my passion and my productivity in the same notion. So this is the first call that I've had to finally be able to say it. We had our call 7:30 this morning.
I have the breaking news. That's great. I love it.
Breaking news.
I love it when people share breaking news on the podcast. I love it.
So the culmination of the security, tech, working with young people, a female leader, entrepreneur. To your point, the moment it all came together.
Genius.
Here's why I share it. We met 2 years ago. Keep at it. Don't give up. Let the relationships be authentic. See the problem and be the resource. You'll be top of mind.
I love that so much. wisdom. So I mean, this is one of those where I'm actually very happy because we were already kind of friends before we talked. Because
Yeah.
I have this guest, and I'm like, I need to get more of you, and I don't know how, but I know how to get more of you.
Oh, yeah.
And then if the audience wants to get more of Shirelle, we have all the show notes about how either to
Yep.
get in contact. We'll have her back. My last question for every single episode is: besides everything we spoke about, what makes you tick on the days that you are not as optimistic and that you need to resource that beautiful spirit you have? What's your go-to theme?
My grandfather said, he who asks the questions or she who asks the questions leads the conversation. So when I'm tapped out, I start journaling and writing down questions, and I know it's still work to be done.
So inspirational.
Yeah.
Shirelle, it's been such a pleasure to have you here on Back to Basics. I thank you for all you do, and I'll keep working that magic because I think
Thank
it's so
you.
inspirational. And others can see that you can make anything happen. You can get your job and your genius and your superpower of what you're good at skill-wise with your true passion, and they can indeed be interconnected in the most magical ways.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to coming back. You've been amazing.
Thank you. And for all of you out there, check out the YouTube channel and all the episodes that are starting to show up there. Recommended. You can connect with us through a voice memo in our page at podpage at backtobasics.com. Until a new episode, it's good to have you here. Take care. You've been listening to Back to Basics. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. If you haven't yet, subscribe, rate, and review this podcast on Apple Podcast or any of your favorite streaming platforms. This is the best gift you can give us. Join me next week for another Back to Basics conversation. And if you want to find out about other exciting things I'm working on, visit leticialatino.com. Thank you, and until the next time.